there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. I am excited to use up my scraps. Now, everybody has them, and for example, this is how I store all of my little scraps here. And this is a 6x6 paper pad called When We First Met, and anything that's kind of medium or decent enough, I just kind of pop it back in there, and then when I store them, I store my paper pads upside down, so I know that nothing is going to fall out of them. But I put all of those different shapes. Some of it's a little bit torn, they're all different sizes. And then same here with these little coloured paper pad pieces. I just pop them back in and they sit in there nicely until I find a project for them. And then sometimes when I'm doing a project like this and I just need to use them all up, it helps me be creative when I don't kind of pick the patterns that are available quite so much. And I maybe put things together that I might not otherwise put together. So here I am going to cut these into strips, which is super a great way to use up your scraps. And I am going to cut these into kind of 3 different sizes. So the smallest is going to be 1/4 of an inch, and then around 3/8 of an inch, and then 1/2 inch is going to be the widest strip. But it doesn't even matter, and you don't really have to measure. I made a couple of these before this one, and honestly I didn't measure those ones and they worked out just fine. If you like to measure, then go for gold. So I cut out some of those pieces that I just had there, and now I am going to start by putting them together. So I have a piece of scrapbook.com double-sided adhesive sheets. Now I like these ones because they are thick. They are thicker than, for example, the Stick It double-sided adhesive sheets, and those are the 2 kinds that I use, but I wanted this one because it's thicker. Now I'm going to pull off the release paper, but I'm actually going to pop it back on half of it just so I have somewhere to hold on to. When I'm doing this kind of design, I make sure that I am doing it on a diagonal, and that way you can't see if I've gone straight or not. Make sure that you leave a little gap in between all of our pieces. So that way some of the adhesive will still be exposed, and I am just putting them at all different lengths. Some of them go right across the page. Some of them I like to vary where they meet in the middle, and that's what I'm trying to do. I don't want to have the kind of joins and connectors at the same point all the way down my sheet of paper. Now my sheet here is, I think it's around 6 inches by 4 1/4 at the moment. I made it a little bit longer than I would need it just because I knew I would cut it down, but I wasn't sure how big I wanted to cut it down to yet. So when I'm working with scraps, often I work with a little bit bigger piece of paper, and then I can always decide later on how big I want things to be. So I'm just trying to vary up the patterns, make sure that they are not kind of next to each other. Sometimes if I have the colour or don't have enough of the colour that I need, I just snip it off the ends, one of the ends that are kind of sticking out. And then when I redid this over and over again, I cut off the sides of this project, and then I just go back and use up those little ends again and again until they're too small that I can't use them at all. So this is kind of a ever evolving scraps project, which is what I really enjoyed. I kind of sat down for a whole morning. It just created the same project over and over again, and then I thought I would share one with you guys. So I'm coming to the end here, making sure that all my joins are in all different places, but it is most important that you leave a little gap between all of our pieces of paper. Now I'm just roughly cutting off these edges here so it's much easier for me to handle. And then I'm going to pop all those other scraps to the side, but not throw them out yet because there are some really nice long ones in there. Then I'm taking some kind of holographic silver glitter, and I'm going to pop that over the top just a little bit. Then I'm going to use a little palette knife and really burnish this into all of those cracks. This kind of reminds me like bricks. I'm wanting to fill up all of those gaps in between my sheets of paper, my little scraps of paper there. So I'm filling up all those gaps where the adhesive was exposed that we left, and I just eyeballed all of them. I wasn't making sure that they were perfectly spaced. That would take too much time for my liking, so I was just eyeballing them and making sure there was about the same gap in between. I'm using a little damp cloth so that I can get rid of all of those pieces of excess glitter, and now everything is burnished really well using my palette knife. I don't want any glitter falling off, and that's why I love the scrapbook.com double-sided adhesive, because it is such a strong adhesive. Nothing is coming off here, and that's what I want when I'm using glitter. I don't want it to keep shedding as it goes through the mail and the recipient receives it. So here's our finished little piece here, and I really love it, but I'm not finished just yet because I want to make this into a card and show you guys how you can use these backgrounds. So I have just a small piece of the same double-sided adhesive here, and I'm running it through with an oval. And then with that same oval, I'm going to take off one side of the release paper and coat it in the same glitter. I really like to have elements of my card repeated, so when I'm thinking about the colors that I'm using, I want things to kind of coordinate and have the same colors going throughout. So in this card, I'm doing that using the silver glitter, and that's kind of the thing that is the same and is repeated throughout, because all of my scraps are quite different colors. So I'm just using my palette knife, and again, I want to make sure it's really burnished in well. I don't want any of this glitter coming off or rubbing off. So then I have another little oval here, and I'm using this Altenew, I think it's called Heartfelt Sentiments stamp set. This is one that you've seen lots of times on my channel before, and I have this big long sentiment that says thank you so much, and I'm going to cut it into all 4 individual words. Don't worry, I can pop this back together again. I'm not worried about that because I will be able to kind of easily place the photopolymer back together exactly as it was if I want to stamp it in a line again. But for this one, I want it to be stacked one on top of the other. Now, even though I have magnets in my mini Misty, I am using some removable adhesive, which is that Tombow tape runner there to the side. I use this all the time in my crafting. It is definitely a tool that I recommend. I use it so often, and I am popping it on the back of that little oval so that it sits nicely in my Misty, because I don't really have room for the magnets to hold down my oval. So I've stacked my words up, and then I'm using some VersaFine Onyx black ink, so a nice dark black ink. It's a pigment ink, and it stamps beautifully. Just one time is plenty, and then that is my sentiment straight and ready for the middle. Now I have all these ovals here, so I'm going to put a little bit of double-sided tape on the back of the one that I stamped, and I use the Hero Arts stacking ovals set to cut all of these ovals out. And I love the Hero Arts set because there is such a small difference in between the different size ovals, and that is fantastic when I'm trying to get just a really skinny little border. So I love the look of these 2 different size ovals there stacked, and then I had a bigger oval. It's a couple of sizes up, and that is cut out in vellum. So I'm peeling off the other side of the release paper that I did for that glitter sheet, which makes life so easy, and I'm going to pop that down right in the middle of the vellum. So that was a nice easy sentiment. Because our background is quite bright and bold, I really wanted something to tone it down a little bit, but I certainly don't want to cover it up. I don't want any of that gorgeous glitter and those colors to all disappear. So I want to be able to see my sentiment and make sure it stands out and doesn't get lost, but I certainly don't want to take over the background that we created. So in the end, I did end up cutting it down to be 4 by 5 1/4 inches, and I love the Tim Holtz trimmer because it just cuts through all of that adhesive, the scrapbook.com double-sided adhesive, and the scraps and the glitter with no trouble at all. So that's really, really good. Now the other cool thing here when lining this up, because remember we did this on the double-sided adhesive, so I can still pull back this and stick it down. So all I'm going to do is peel off one tiny corner, just that wee corner up there. And then everything else, I'm going to line it up. I can still move this around easily because the rest of the release paper is perfect. Once I have it all lined up, I hold it down with one hand and press that tiny wee corner, and then I'm able to just pull back the rest of the release paper. I do a little bit at a time, and then that way it is all perfectly lined up and I don't have to worry about getting my layers straight. So that does make it nice and easy. Then you saw that I popped a little bit of double-sided adhesive on the back of the vellum there, but just making sure I did it inside of the smaller ovals so that you couldn't see any adhesive. And that is a really nice, easy, simple card using up all of our scraps that we all have in our stash. And I'm sure you have some double-sided adhesive and some glitter lying around, so this one is nice and easy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really look forward to seeing you in the next video, and let me know what you think of this one. Cheers. See you next time. Bye.